Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty major cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. We'd love to have you. So this is the week for the new engine. Yes, indeed. At long last, I'm finally going to get the new engine, old engine, replacement engine, next engine, what are we going to call it? Into MV Geordie. It's going to be a bit of an express operation versus last time. Those of you who've been around for a while know that I've already done this twice. Anyway, I'm off to get some gear. Holy smoke, have you bought a 2x4 lately? 12 bucks for a 2x4x12. It seems like a lot of wood to put this engine in and take the old one out, but it's the price of it. Fun stuff. And by fun stuff, I mean the really not fun stuff. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm really quite comfortable in here right now, and it's going to be hard to pull this all apart and turn it back into a shop. Yes, the overall benefit is going to be absolutely fantastic, but oh, okay, nothing to be done about it. Get on with it. Calculations are correct, this should just slide right inside the other, and I have enough room to do the engine. Not that these are incredibly valuable, but I'd rather be able to put them right back out when this is all done. Yeah. Okay then. Hello, old friend. Alright, so the first step to building the gantry in here to lift the engine out is the main beam, which runs 4.5 down the top of the cabin roof here, cabin overhead. Anyway, and I can't screw it directly to here because I'll do some damage. You can see screws from the previous engine install. So what I do, I put a little block up here like that, and I'll screw that first too with a couple pieces of foam to keep from damaging the overhead material here, and then I can screw the beam to that, and that gives it pretty good rigidity. Let's get on with that. There we go. That's a good rigid mount. I really should have done this while I still had the sole down. There we go. From here on, it's easy. I swear by this particular brand of bits. Time for a new one. But this one has lasted years. Okay, so that is seriously solid. Now, if you're wondering how I'm going to lift the engine up by putting a few screws, toe screws into the overhead cabin top, no, there'll be full support structure underneath this down onto the engine beds. This is just to hold this in place and tie it in place while I build that structure. I had to do a little bit of a cowboy carving here to get this to fit around the transmission mounts at the bottom there, but I'm not going to show you actually doing this because this is a responsible show after all. And now for a little actual support here. As you can see, I'm cursing my various collection of remaining Robertson bits. Ah, that one's reasonable. There we go. Nice. Stop using your hand as a hammer. For a little extra support, even though it's definitely overkill, I'm adding an extra 2x6 up here on the other side of the uprights. All right, nothing left to do but to riddle the thing with screws. Lots more screws. You don't need to watch that. All right then, so I've picked up the engine hoist from a buddy of mine, Mike. You all know Mike. He makes the bottle openers out of old wrenches. Really, really great. And he also gifted me the brace and bit last year. Also gave me a couple, or loaned me a couple of ratchet chain fall type devices. So that's gonna be really fun. Anyway, let's get this thing out of here because we gotta go pick up the engine later. Yeah. Time to get this thing out. Well, not out, but up far enough that I can take the transmission and the bell housing and the starter motor and all the heavy stuff off it, so it's light enough to go out the window. Okay. All right then, folks, this is the big moment. These things are fantastic. Thanks so much, Mike. I've lubed them up a bit and tinkered with them a bit and got them working really well. So I've got these two set up, the front and the back of the engine. It's coming out with the transmission and the bell housing and everything. Then I'll bring it up and sit it on a platform and take all that stuff off. You may be able to see from where you are that they're both tipped forward a bit at the front. That's because as soon as it comes up, it has to swing forward a bit to clear the sole at the back, because the transmission actually tucks under the sole. So that's pretty straightforward. And this is what I just call a safety line. Basically, every few inches I bring up the engine, I'll just tauten this up again. Gosh forbid either of these let go. This would easily take the weight of the whole engine and keep it from crashing through the bottom of the boat. Is it time to get started? Here we go. All right then, so I've got it up. I've replaced as much of the sole as I can get in place. Now, I don't expect the sole to hold the engine. It's much too heavy for that. But it does give me a working platform that I can take the transmission and stuff off. What it does mean, I can put some extra 2x4s, and I'll show you in a minute, that will ease some of the load. Plus, I'll never take all the tension off the hoist, so I should be in good shape here. So let's lower this back down again. Throw this thing in reverse. All right, so here's the beast. Okay, so I'm going to take the transmission off and the bell housing off and the flywheel off. The flywheel on this thing is insanely heavy. Plus, I believe I'm going to reuse the flywheel and this bell housing on the new engine, but more on that later. Anyway, so I'm going to take the transmission off with its mounts, with the adapter plate, all in one piece. I put one of my come-alongs on here, and that should make this a relatively easy little thing. The transmission is not incredibly heavy, but it's not light. Okay, last bolt. And this should... There we go. It's actually pretty heavy with the mount and the bell housing on there. Alright, with the transmission off, you can see into the bell housing, and here's the drive plate, which is basically just a way to attach the transmission input spline onto the flywheel, and it's got a bunch of various holes, so it's a universal fit. Anyway, so just have to cut these wires and take these Allen cap screws out. There was a little moisture in the bottom of here and some dirt. Unfortunately, as you all know if you've been following along, this engine sits very, very low in the bilge, and I had one high water incident about a year ago that would have caused this, and so you have to be really, really careful that you don't have a buildup of water in the bilge, because the bottom of this bell housing is literally only about 2 inches above the bottom of the boat, maybe less. Now that part was easy. This baby, whoa. I'll begin by straightening out the lock tabs. Don't use your hand as a hammer. Okay, whoa, ran out of time. We gotta go get the engine, and it's not really nearby. Okay, this is gonna be fun. I'm here to get it. It's underneath that tarp. Forklift's gonna forklift it in, and I'll arrange some structural stuff when the time comes. I don't know if you heard any of that. Okay, let's put the motor in. A little further, 6 inches. Right there. How am I left, right? Pretty good? So I'm going to tie it down somewhat with some big lags. The only ratchet straps I could find this morning were camo. If I had a nickel for every set of ratchet straps I've owned, I mean, hundreds. Well, the motor's home. Everything seems to be going pretty well. Let's just hope it stays that way. Look at the beautiful light on the city. Let's pick up where we left off. To get these massive bolts out of here, I obviously have to keep the flywheel from turning. So you can see what I've done here. Basically a bolt in one of the flywheel bolts and jammed in this case with my hammer, and I'm ready to go. Oh, there we go, piece of cake. Ah, there we go. Do I wish I still had an impact wrench? Sometimes. There we go. I think I've mentioned before that this flywheel is insanely heavy. Whoa! Will you look at that? Will you look at that? 3 inches thick solid steel. That's crazy. Who needs an impact wrench when some kind person gifted you a beautiful speed wrench? There's another few pounds off. Yeah. Woohoo! Okay. Just had to show you the sky tonight. Well, folks, and here it is, finally at home, and I've just given it a bit of a rinse off, get some of the worst of the dust and grime off it. Now, some would say, Peter, it's about time you put a diesel engine Land Rover, and well, there I have. I've used that joke before. Ironically, I have a North American engine in my British vehicle and a British engine in my North American boat, or will when I do it. Anyway, let's take a little tour. This is probably the easiest time to look at this engine. Once it's down in the bilge, it'll be a little harder to see. So for those who aren't familiar with the Perkins 4236, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically a big old lump of a cast iron block, massive, heavy tractor engine. It was used in thousands of applications: tractors, combines, generators, boats, all kinds of things, which make it very, very common. but they were built and used all over the world, which means they have perpetual service parts. They're a wet sleeve. In other words, the sleeve for the cylinder is replaceable, so it's very, very easy to rebuild. I shouldn't say it's easy, but you can do a full rebuild without having to bore it out and go for larger pistons. Anyway, so basically a quick tour. We're on the starboard side here. This particular bell housing is the stationary engine bell housing, so it'll be coming off. These are very generic engines. Many things are interchangeable. It's kind of a kit. So this starter is on the starboard side, but when I put the marine bell housing back on, it'll move back over to the port side. Likewise, the oil filter, which is on that side, will come back over to this side. This is the later style of the Perkins 4236, so it has the heat exchanger down here on the side of the block, much smaller, rather than integrated into the header tank, which is the way it was on the older engine, the one I'm not able to deal with. Exhaust manifold, cast iron, chronically you know, they don't last forever. One really neat thing about this particular engine, it came with a spare new exhaust manifold. That alone is worth a ton of money. Heat exchanger, if you can see over there, it came with 2 brand new replacement heat exchangers. Again, worth a ton of money. So in so many ways, this is just such a fantastic motor for me. Now again, this was out of a genset, a generator aboard a boat, so it's a marinized engine, but it wasn't the drive engine. As a result, it was meant to be just bolted to a platform. That's why it has these really tall motor mounts. Not at all suitable for putting in the boat, but again, motor mounts are interchangeable, and I'll swap them for the motor mounts that are on the boat already. Biggest problem I'm going to have, and it's just work, the oil pan is much deeper on the stationary engine version of this, but the oil pan is interchangeable with the one that's on the boat that I'm going to get rid of, so I'm going to have to swap the oil pans as well as the oil pickup tubes and strainer. Not a big deal, really. It's just got to be done, and I knew that was going to be the case. Up front, pretty straightforward. You know, all the chain cover, using just a standard Delco 10SI alternator, which is exactly what I'll put back on it, but not this one. Header tank is now much smaller on these versions of it, a little more compact, which is great, gives me a little more room under the sole. Of course, these studs were for some other accessory, which will go, and we'll get rid of those. Back around the port side, this comes with a mechanical tack drive, which is nice. So I don't know about the gearing. I'll have to do a little research to see if the tack that I'm proposing to buy is suitable for that particular speed, but I'll figure that out. Along this side, this is the business side of the engine, injection pump. This one is quite nice because it has the solenoid shutoff, which is the older style solenoid shutoff. It also has the new style, which is built right into the pump, which has never been used. It's brand new. So it has some redundancy. Maybe one or the other doesn't work. I don't know. I'll get to play with that when I start messing with it. Injectors up top, lead off lines, etc. Cooling lines, the raw water pump is here, driven off a gear off the gear case, which is kind of nice. The oil filter and cooler assembly is on this side on this engine. It'll probably get moved to the other side because I have so many different generations of this with the various engines I've played with. I'd love to be able to go with this, but I know that oil filter will be sticking right into the engine beds, so I'm not going to be able to do that exactly as it is. It has a nice built-in oil cooler on the back here. What it doesn't have is a built-in transmission cooler, because then again, it wasn't designed to be hitched up to a transmission. So I still have to work out a transmission cooler somehow, but we'll figure that out. Anyway, I'm super excited, super pleased with it. I know it'll be just fine. I've just cleaned it up a bit. Someone's painted it in this Detroit green. In the future, it'll have a mismatched transmission, bell housing, oil pan, etc. It'll look like a real mess. But once I've got it running and tested and see trials, and I know the motor's good and doesn't need to come apart again for some reason, I'm gonna pull it back out again, do all the work I have to do to the engine beds and stuff, and I'll clean up and repaint the engine. Yes, I'd love to have a nice shiny new one-colored engine, but it's not the top priority. So much fun. Now we just got to put it in. So then here we go. Beer of the Week live on location in the parking lot, hanging out with the Perkins. Okay, excellent. So, the beer this week. Now this is a really special treat. This is Wheat King IPA, and it's from the Williams Street Beer Company in Cobourg, Ontario. Yes, it is. And it was sent to me by Sheila. Sheila Strawn on behalf of her husband, Stephen. So, Stephen, big surprise. Apparently you didn't know. So there you are. Thank you ever so much for this very appetizing looking beverage. Let's see how that pours. Look, I'm doing relatively well. I'm looking forward to this. Another long day, let me tell you. Okay, that looks brilliant. So, to Sheila and Stephen, thank you ever so much. Oh, that's delicious. Oh my gosh. And Sheila sent a 6-pack of assorted stuff, so there's plenty more stuff to try here. Excellent, thanks again. Let's get on with what we have to do here. 3 new patrons. Very, very grateful. Scott Marquette, Cameron White, and my good friend Lloyd Williams. Lloyd, you naughty boy. But thank you ever so much. So to the 3 of you, thanks ever so much for coming aboard. Couldn't do this without you. Man, that is okay. And a lovely gift from the Amazon wish list. These are the little nubs that are hard to describe, but anyway, they're from Manfrotto, which is the company that makes the tripod you're all sitting on right now. And these are spare adapter nubs, so I can put interchangeable cameras on, which is really great because I'm jumping from the iPhone to the GoPro to the SLR. So this is a real treat, and they're ridiculously expensive. So thank you very much, whoever it is that sent these, because as often seems to be the case, these come without any sort of indication of who sent it. So if you sent me the Manfrotto camera adapters, please let me know, and I'll be sure to thank you properly. We need to get on to the t-shirt. First off, last week's t-shirt winner was Chris Bartram. Congratulations, Chris. I think I've already reached out to you and let you know, but perhaps not. And this week, if you'd like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, simply use the word engine in a comment down below, and I'll pick at random from the first 20 weeks worth of comments. And if I pick your comment, you'll have won yourself a Travels with Geordie t-shirt. See you next week. Did I say next week? I have an idea. I think we'll do a live stream this afternoon, Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. I'm going to do a live stream where I can walk around and discuss the 2 engines and the installation, because there's bound to be a ton of questions about that. So it's a Q&A sort of live stream about the engine swap. The engine, as you know, is already out of the boat, and well, not out of the boat, but out of the bilge. So I can point out any sort of little things that people are interested in. Of course, one of the major things that people are going to wonder about is the sad condition of the engine beds and the framing down below. And as I've mentioned, I'm not going to do anything about that right now, but I have a big plan for it. Anyway, see you in a few hours. Cheers.